Hello and welcome to Edison TV. I'm Dan Ridsdale and today I'm joined by Chris Goulden, Chief Financial Officer of Corero Networks. Corero is a leading provider of distributed denial of service protection. The company is listed on London's AIM market and capitalised at somewhat over £80 million. Chris, many thanks for joining me today.
No, thanks. Great to be here.
Good. Can we start off by looking at your results? You recently reported your full year results.
Yep.
Can you tell us about the key highlights there?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So results were largely in line with market expectations. I guess key figures really: revenue growth of 10%. Underlying in that is ARR of 16% growth. So revenue of 24.6 million in the year. Gross margin remains high, 91%. And I guess the other key stat we're proud of is customer retention at 97%. Now, they're the highlights, but it doesn't tell the underlying story, right? Which was a significant year of change for the company, particularly in terms of leadership. So Carl Herberger joined as CEO at the start of the year. I joined partway through the year as well. And with a new CEO comes new go-to-market, change in personnel, change in strategy. So actually really proud of those results, despite all of the change that happened through 2024.
Interesting, yeah, thanks. And then you talked about gross margin there. Gross margin was 91%, and you talked about the change in mix towards ARR as well. Is that as far as margin can go? Gross margin can go? It's already pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you look at the history in terms of gross margin, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, low 80s, pretty much in line with our competition, to be honest. And that was more of a hardware mix. We have reduced hardware now, and we focus solely on software. So we are a software-led organization. We can sell software only, and the solution works in that respect. The hardware, which dilutes that margin for us, really is about 10 or 15% of our revenue. And that's really only sold when customers need some hardware to put the software on. Our hardware isn't anything special. The software is not tied to our hardware. That's one of our USPs, actually. It's just optimized for our software performance. So I think in terms of where gross margin could go, I think we've kind of hit that limit now. I think trying to push it any higher is really detrimental to our selling process. That's fundamentally selling costs, which is in there. As we move forward, we are looking to continue to reduce the reliance on hardware further. The software is being developed so that it can work on pretty much any device out there. But equally, with the introduction of the core platform, there'll be additional kind of costs of running that platform as well. So I'd expect it to hopefully stay around where we are. I think it's at a pretty good state.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like to explore the relationship between, I guess, customer retention and ARR. So your ARR grew 16%.
Yep.
Customer retention 97%. So that implies that you are, I guess, your net churn, you're upselling into your existing customer base quite successfully.
Yep.
Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't report currently on an NRR basis, something that the company's not done historically, something that I'm looking to introduce if we can. But you're right, the maths stack up. 97% retention. Of those customers, 70% of those in the year we upsold. So either through a cost increase or through selling additional products. So, the maths stacks up that it's over 100%.
And R&D spend, you as a business, you spend a significant amount on R&D. I think 4.8 million of the year, about 20% of sales.
Yep.
How should we expect that to trend?
Yeah, so 2024 saw quite an increase, actually. It was about 1.3 million increase in terms of what you see on the balance sheet. But that was largely part of this transformative year, 2024. Carl coming in, he used to run a competitor a number of years ago, and maybe the development cycle at Corero wasn't as fast-paced as he expects. So we had some significant developments on the existing SmartWall 1 solution in 2024, primarily the 400 gig capability, both in a software and a hardware unit. So about $1 million of that incremental spend went on the 400 gig capability. Now that immediately saw results because there's a Forte Telecom deal in Brazil that we announced right at the start of this year. That was predicated on the 400 gig capability. That was over $1 million in total contract value. And a recent contract win with Tech Enabler, also in Brazil, actually. That was an upgrade to the 400 gig capability. So immediate returns on that spend. Now, it wasn't all incremental spend either. Some of it was a refocus of the existing engineering team from BAU and maintenance activities into development. So from the existing product, I would expect that spend to reduce back to normal levels, maybe a little bit higher in 2025. We are continually looking to enhance the existing product, particularly with the evolution and the pace at which the threat landscape is changing, right? We need to keep up with that. Where we will see a different tact of development spend in 2025 is on the core platform, the new product platform that we announced in Q4 2024. Now, these are a series of capabilities that will sit adjacent to our existing product, basically to complement, and these are additional functionalities that customers tend to buy with DDoS. I've been remarkably surprised at how efficiently and cost-effective we've been able to do that development so far. So I guess if you take the two in combination, my expectation and what we're aiming for is we'll probably see a continued slight increase in dollar value, but we're looking to see a definite reduction as a percentage of revenue going forward.
Got it. And you mentioned Tech Enabler there. You've recently had a couple of good partnership announcements with the extension with Juniper and with Tech Enabler. Can you just talk about your partnership strategy and how that folds into the overall growth plan?
Yeah. The partnerships, particularly our alliance partnerships, they are key to the growth of Corero. We are a very small company in quite a large market, and the only way that we're going to accelerate our growth is to leverage these partnerships. If you take the scale of an Akamai or a Juniper, their selling team, their geography, their brand name and awareness in the market, they get us into opportunities that we could never get into on our own. And you talk about Tech Enabler in particular, in Brazil and the rest of Latin America, they have a great presence and there's a great market down there. Again, we put a salesperson into LATAM in 2024, but one person's not going to make a market. So these partnerships are really key to us. And as you say, with Tech Enabler, the Forte Telecom deal that we announced, that was through Tech Enabler. So a great start to that partnership. And Forte themselves, they have end customers that also would benefit from the Corero DDoS protection. So we actually continue to win customers who are turning into partners on that basis, where they really appreciate the protection that we provide themselves, but they see the benefit and the added value that they can provide to their customers by on-selling the Corero solution.
Interesting. So some network effects coming into play.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Juniper in a little bit more depth?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you've been working with them, you've been partnered with them for a while. What does this new partnership bring to the equation?
Yeah. So Juniper partnership has been in place for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And it was initially really successful. There was a really strong uptick in the first year or two. And I think one of the things that we noticed when we did the contract renewal was there were some commercial elements in there that were causing some blockers between the two organizations, which really meant that there were certain scenarios that Juniper were going into that meant they couldn't offer the full solution. And it just created barriers in kind of growing that relationship. So one of the key things that we've done with the new contract is to reword it and take out any of those blockers. That's got both sides of the relationship really refreshed, invigorated. And actually, it should open up a wider opportunity pool for both parties now going forward.
Interesting. I look forward to seeing what happens there. More generally, in terms of the fundamental growth drivers of the business, can you talk through, what you see as the key pillars of your growth for the next 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah. So, Carl joining, he brought with him a kind of new accelerated go-to-market strategy. One of those 4 pillars, if you like, that we brought in is to expand the geographic scope of the business. So prior to 2024, about 80% of the business was done through the US. We have put some salespeople across the globe now, or expanded the kind of regions that we have direct selling people. So we put somebody in the Middle East, we put somebody into LATAM, and we put somebody into APAC. And that spread of business now is, even in year 1 has changed significantly. So now 70% of the business is in the Americas, and a significant portion of those wins were in Brazil, as we mentioned, with Tech Enabler and Forte Telecom. So geographic expansion is one. As I say, 80% of the business was in the US. 50% of the DDoS market is outside of the US, which wasn't being addressed previously. So we've seen real strong opportunity growth and wins in LATAM, as we say, real strong wins in the Middle East, and pipeline development in APAC is doing well as well.
What about overall market growth? We're seeing lots of, I guess, news flow and noise about the DDoS market, well, DDoS attacks growing. Equally, we've got a tricky geopolitical situation. I don't know if what drives DDoS or hampers your market. But are there any sort of stats you can share in terms of the overall growth of the DDoS market that essentially provides a basis for your business?
Yeah, sure. The attack landscape is changing and growing at a rapid rate. So the largest ever DDoS attack by size was recorded in January this year. X went down, or Twitter went down twice in the space of a couple of weeks from a DDoS attack earlier this year. When you look at the stats coming out of industry analysts, anywhere between kind of 80 and 400% growth, depending on the attack type through 2024. I think the consensus sits around 100% growth in attack type. When you translate that to what the dollar value of the industry could be, it's 2023 into 24 was about $4 billion. It's looking to grow to about $9 billion by 2030, according to analysts. It's about a 15% CAGR.
Right, get you. And now in terms of the product side, you've got the core product, which seems to, again, expand your revenue opportunity with your existing customers, your market opportunity. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we're really excited about the core platform. So core is the Corero Observability and Resilience ecosystem. Now, essentially, it's a platform of additional capabilities that are often bought alongside DDoS. So we like to use the analogy of Corero makes a really great hamburger, but people often want fries and a Coke, which we don't sell. So people either had to go elsewhere for their fries and a Coke, or if they wanted a combination, Corero just wasn't an option. So we think there's a few significant opportunities with these capabilities. There's our existing customer base. We talked earlier that we have a 97% retention. So we have really happy customers. We just didn't have anything extra to sell them previously. So existing customers is first and foremost where we see an opportunity. The products can be sold in isolation as well. And we've seen real interest in the products on their own. And then third is, as we talk about, these are complementary products to DDoS. And what we do find in some competitive situations is all of our direct competitors make some or all of these products already. And so if a customer is looking to consolidate their buying into one vendor, that can be a barrier to us in certain bid scenarios. So this will keep us in more opportunities longer to fight competition and hopefully take market share.
Thank you. And I can't have an interview without asking a question on AI. Can you discuss how the threat landscape is changing generally, but also discuss the ramifications for AI, both in terms of what's required from your products and the demand for your products, but maybe other elements in on how you're utilizing AI in the business?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, one of the things that AI is doing is speeding everything up, right? And the attackers in the DDoS landscape are making use of that. And, they are able to fire more sophisticated attacks at a much higher frequency. And because of the ease at which they're able to develop them, they're basically selling them as a SaaS-based product to anybody who wants to buy and use them. Really the proliferation of AI is driving the growth in attacks, specifically in DDoS. Now, in terms of what that means for Corero, we need to catch up and stay up to date with the movement in the attack types or the speed at which they're evolving. So yes, we are obviously building AI into our functionality as we move forward. I think like a lot of companies, we're being cautious about how we use AI and which tools we use. Not every customer is happy with AI being used potentially on their product. So that's something that we need to consider. And also the pace at which AI is moving and the tools that are out there, you just have to be a bit cautious about which tools you go with to make sure that it's still the leading tool in 6 months' time.
We're seeing that as well. Back to the financials. You've got a healthy balance sheet, 5.3 million on the balance sheet. it looks as if you're going to carry on generating good levels of cash as well. Should we think about Corero as purely, mainly an organic growth story, or do you see the opportunity for M&A as well?
Yeah, so I mean, cash generation is a fairly new problem for Corero to have, a nice problem, actually. I guess when you look at the market landscape, there's, $4 billion currently is the addressable market. Corero, we believe we can address about 2 billion of that because the other 2 is largely cloud-based. And within that 2 billion, there's roughly $500 million of renewals that come up each year, which Corero weren't really actively targeting previously. So part of the accelerated go-to-market strategy is to actively target competitor renewals. And, we had a fairly high success rate in 2024. Those renewals that we can get into the bid process on, where we can get down to the point of demonstrating the effectiveness of the product, we have quite a high success rate. So actually, rather than, an investment, it's really a repivot of the sales team and the go-to-market, really seeking out those customers who already have a budget. They already have a defined buying motion. So we think there's significant opportunity there really to take market share. Having said that, we are developing additional capabilities as well. And, any opportunistic opportunities that come in terms of M&A, we'll always explore.
Chris, fascinating discussion. Looks as if you're in great shape. Many thanks for joining me today.
No, thanks for your time. Really enjoyed it.